If we're going to shoot for the stars, it's likely a good idea to have a reliable means of navigation. Early signaling through lead indicators can save a costly course correction later in the journey. Let's have a look at how the genius of the critical chain method through buffer management provides us with just such a means of navigation to stay on course and to repeatedly and reliably deliver the outcomes promised in the business case. If ever we're going to repeatedly deliver extraordinary results, we need to be systematic in how we control what none other than Deming called common cause variation. That is, the variation or uncertainty that is inherent in our work processes. This is especially so in the case of knowledge workers, where the nature of the work is quite different from the confines of the production line. People are expected to exercise far more discretion and judgment with regard to the planning and performance of their work. After all, they're paid for the particular and specialist knowledge they bring to the collective effort. So, how do we keep the whole engine moving in sync? How do we harness that specialist knowledge whilst at the same time allow our specialist knowledge workers the autonomy they need to deliver their best work? The fever chart is just such a mechanism. What you see is a graph which has the percentage buffer consumed on the y-axis and the percentage chain completed on the x-axis. The graph is split into three, the green, yellow, and red zones. In this example, the critical chain is made up of three equal tasks shown in gray, each representing the P50 estimate effort required for completion. At the end of the chain is the project buffer, the aggregated contingency of all three tasks. The size of the buffer is half as long as the chain feeding into it. It is day one of the project and the project manager is running the kickoff activities. No chain has been completed and no buffer has been consumed. This is our first checkpoint. The designer, resource A, shown in blue, is working on task 1, complete design. We put our instruments into the work and note that 10% of the chain has been completed, as shown by the thick black bar running through the middle of task 1. At the same time, we monitor the fact that around 10% of the buffer has been consumed. This means that we're running in the high performance zone. The idea is not to forego the consumption of the buffer. If we really are estimating effort on the basis of a P50, we must accept that the buffer will be consumed. A great result is for the project to finish in the top right-hand corner of the chart. All of the buffer is used at the moment the last piece of the chain is complete. At our next checkpoint on project progress, we can see that we're actually ahead of the game. We've completed about 23% of the critical chain, but have only consumed about 8% of the buffer. It's useful to think of the buffer as a shock absorber. Sometimes it's compressed, and at other times it's relaxed. We can tell the amount of compression by looking at the ratio of the percentage of critical chain complete to the percentage of buffer consumed. We call this ratio the critical ratio. If we're able to run at a ratio of 1, we'll be running up the high-performance gold streak in the middle of the fever chart. But life's not like that. We hit a snag, and the engineer working on task 2 finds it taking longer than she thought. And whilst 45% of the chain has been completed, the buffer is 60% consumed. It's very important to note here that red is not bad. It is in fact a very useful means of providing some feedback from the system. Remember, this is like a relay race. Nobody wins until the last person crosses the line. It's not the fault of the engineer that this task is running late. We fully expect half of the tasks to run late if we have been fed income and giving P50 estimates. What the red signal does is invite the team to focus on what can be done to unblock whatever it is that is the bottleneck. The signal is a lead indicator telling us at a time when we're only 45% into the critical chain that if we don't take immediate corrective action, the project will be late. Applying our 5-step focus, not only have we found the constraint, but we have the opportunity to optimize and collaborate before the project gets out of control. This ability to drive looking through the front window rather than the rearview mirror used by other control mechanisms means that very early on in a project life cycle, you know what you need to do to keep the project on track. Collaboration in this case might mean that a boss excuses the engineer from attending meetings while she works through completing the task. Colleagues fetch coffee, children, and dry cleaning to keep the constraint doing that which only the constraint can do. It's a team effort to win the relay, not an invitation to cast blame on someone who may have inherited a late task or is working through a poorly defined requirement. Meantime, quality assurance has been getting fully kitted for task 3, anticipating that the work would be coming in late because of the signal provided earlier on. He's got his team to think through everything they can do to recover some of the deficit. And sure enough, their efforts pay dividends. The shock absorber is no longer under stress. With almost 80% of the critical chain complete and only 40% buffer consumed, the team can see their way to delivering the full scope on time. Indeed, if the quality assurance folk were asked if they could spare a resource for some other critical activity on another project which is in the red, they could confidently agree to yielding to the request, whilst ever being mindful of when our task starts drifting back up into the red zone. And here we show that just as the last piece of work on the critical chain is completed, the last part of the buffer is consumed. The same principle of the fever chart can be applied to a program or portfolio of work. Each dot represents the current status of each project in the portfolio. The beauty of using the science of work is that you can confidently manage by exception. All projects which are in the green can merrily go about their business. Indeed, if any of the resources they are using are required by one of the projects in or getting close to being in the red zone, then the project managers can confidently give them over to their more troubled colleagues. This is what we mean when we say that aggregating supply of resource is a necessary condition for high performance outcomes, but it's not sufficient. To create the sufficiency, you need a valid signal to assign the resources you have to the correct task on the correct project. In this way, not only are you ensuring the most productive use of your resources, but you're guaranteeing, to the extent possible, a delivery to the promised due date. Thus, as a manager of this portfolio of work, you'd be focusing on Project 1 and Project 2, both of which need attention if they are not to slip their promised due date. Let's take a closer look at Project 1. What we see here is not only the fact that the project is running late, the effect of more buffer being consumed than should have been, given the percentage of chain completed. But in all the fog of execution, we're able to pinpoint exactly the cause of this undesirable effect, the engineer trying to complete engineering. We have found the constraint and can now set about the work of optimizing and collaborating to bring the project back under control. This slide shows 9 different fever charts in the same project. Often they start off way down in the green, what my colleagues and I like to talk as caterpillar territory. But soon enough, reality kicks in. Often the flat line at the beginning is no more than the fact people have been completing tasks ahead of the time when all the controls and instrumentation are in place. In the fever chart at the top left-hand corner, we find that around the 60% completion mark, there's a violent swing up to the northwest corner of the project. This could be because additional scope has been added, or because the original duration estimates were over-optimistic. Despite that, the project team has been able to recover, not once, but twice after deep penetration into the red. The top middle chart is an almost picture-perfect execution, racing up the golden high-performance zone. Every one of these fever charts tells a story of their own. What is truly remarkable, and these are actual charts from a very large program of engineering work, is that every one of them came in on time. Having the ability to apply science to the planning performance of work produces genuinely remarkable results. And remember, this remarkable due date performance happened while simultaneously delivering a productivity factor gain of 25%. So, given that we can together redefine what's possible, and this is not just because we share and are motivated by a common goal, but because we have the power of reason and the logic of mathematics on our side. What does the world call on you to do?